Good afternoon, everyone. It is the second day of January 2023, and I would have liked this to have been my New Year's Day piece, but I had to edit that one so much that I think it was better to just restart it. So let me start out by saying Happy New Year to everybody out there. I hope it is a really happy and successful New Year for everybody. And, it can always be better than the last. And I had my challenges with the last one, but on the other hand, 2022, I had 4 successful CAT scans and was cancer-free. So I'm going to call that a win. So moving on, I wanted to make a couple corrections regarding my last video that basically had to do with the arrest of Andrew Tate, the egomaniac misogynist who has landed himself in Romanian prison. The first correction I wanted to make is that I did pronounce Greta Thunberg's name wrong, and I think I may have just done so again. So I have a video that I'm going to put right here, and I'm going to let everyone know the correct pronunciation. I looked over my last video and I was extremely tired. It was about 3 in the morning.
Greta Thunberg.
And I think I said something like Nuremberg or something of that nature. I did watch a couple videos, and it's with an accent. It's completely different, but I believe with an American or English, speaking accent, I believe correctly it is Greta Thunberg. So either way, I like to make corrections about people's names if I get them wrong, because I think that's the least you can do for people is get their name right. Number 2, I'm going to put a link down below here in the comment or the description section about David Pakman's video concerning Andrew Tate's arrest and his incel followers. Okay, and maybe I shouldn't use that as a term, but I think that's fitting. All right. If you're not familiar with David Pakman's channel, he is a progressive socialist Democrat. Now, that is a different thing than a Democrat. So I hope everyone understands that and understands what I'm saying. So I enjoy his channel very much. He does call out Republicans or Democrats. He's not a member of either party, but of course the far right is going to paint him as a leftist, just as I'm sure that they would paint me in the same way. But I also am not affiliated with any political party. I just happen to think that there is worse than others, and in my opinion, the right wing of the Republican Party is the worst of all. But I digress. I wanted to point out that David Pakman made a great point about was that, you need to have probably a constructive solution for some of the people who have been allowed themselves to have been taken in by the grifter Andrew Tate. And here's why I'm saying this. Now, for Andrew Tate himself, I think he got exactly what he deserved. He's a hateful, misogynistic grifter, homophobe, and, I believe he's right where he belongs, in prison. But as David Pakman pointed out, some of his followers are probably very unstable, very socially awkward, and young men who probably don't really have a place to go for a proper role model. And I'm not making excuses for them by any means. In fact, my take on it is a little different. I think a lot of these young men need to grow up rather quickly and start realizing that no one else is to blame for their problems, and you cannot expect sexual favors from women because you think they're owed to you or anything of that nature. But he made a good point that, maybe people need to be a little bit understanding of where these guys are getting their information, and they're really not I guess just that there just seems to be something lacking in what it is that they're going through. And, you know, it would be great if we could help them in some manner and maybe find a way to have a bit of a better role model for them. Now, I by no means want to be a role model for anyone, or am I suggesting that I wish to do so. But if a jackass like Andrew Tate can put his opinions out there, I certainly can. And I believe that the biggest reason that I have to do that, or not have to do that, that I feel I have just as much right to do that, is, let's see, Andrew Tate, I guess, was 36. So he's mid to late 30s, and he's still acting like a child. I mean, a child is when you're talking about your cars and your mansions and your conquests of women, really there's no difference here than if you were talking about, oh, I have more Transformers than you, I have more G.I. Joes than you, my mommy and daddy have a bigger pool than you do. This is childish behavior. This is not a man's behavior, a woman's behavior. This is not an adult's behavior. So right off the bat, I personally can say, okay, I'm older than Andrew Tate. I'm not going to say exactly how much, but I'm much older than he is, and I've been through a lot of life experiences, so I can at least offer you my opinion here on some of the things that could really help you to move forward in a more positive way without blaming others. So the number one thing that I'm going to say here about that is, if you have subscribed to my channel or you know me, I survived pancreatic cancer. This happened a few years ago. And, you know, I wasn't even supposed to be here. So I can tell you without a doubt that one life lesson learned when you have had to, because at one point I had a failed operation. It didn't work. Things were not looking good at the time. And I had to come to terms with about a 3 to 6 month time span of life. So that is something that changes you. Whether you believe it or not, it changes you forever. And I can tell you this, it will give you perspective about what is important in life. And I can tell you, I'm someone who has been in many different financial situations throughout my life. I've never been ultra wealthy, but I have been, you know, well off. And then I've had times when I haven't been well off. And I'll tell you what, those are not the things that are important. They really aren't. And it's really more of a big picture thing. Now, if all that you think is important is gaining wealth and things, you have the opportunity to do that. You know, things can be unfair. Life is unfair. You may be born into great money. You may have to work very hard for it. So if all you need is to be successful is to own a slew of sports cars and have a mansion, if you want it bad enough, I think you can attain it. It all depends on what you're willing to do. But I'm here to tell you that, you know, having a roof over your head, having good family and friends and people that you love and pets and whatnot and things like this is what's important. So you can take that or leave it. It doesn't matter. Anyway, I have 5 points that I want to make. I'm going to try to speed it up from my previous video anyway because I went on too long. So number one. All right. So my first point. If someone is asking you for money, all right, for their advice, that should be red flag number one.
There's a sucker born every minute.
There's never going to be a time. It's the oldest grift in the book. This is the kind of thing where if I were on here saying, listen, I have the answers to all your problems, I'm going to let you in on them. But you just need to send me $29.95 and you'll get my video. This has been being done for centuries. This is nonsense. Andrew Tate made a fortune off of vulnerable people who really didn't know any better. So that's my first point, is that if money is exchanging hands, here's where the exceptions are to that. First of all, I'm not talking about people on YouTube who have a bonus show or who have added content or things like that. That's just business. You have a right to pay the extra charge or whatever. I'm talking about grifting. And the only time you should be getting psychological or life advice is from someone who is an educated psychologist, therapist, or psychiatrist, or someone of that manner. Other than that, if any money is being exchanged, you're being part of a grift, and they've taken advantage of you. Okay, that was number one. Number two, I'm going to kind of breeze over quickly because I said a little bit more about it in the introduction. Life experience. I don't want to be repetitive, but like I said, if at 36, the guy that you're listening to is still bragging about things like, how many women he slept with and he can control them and things like that, he hasn't learned much in 36 years. So, look to people who have had a long-term success with business, who aren't in Romanian prison, who aren't being arrested for sex trafficking, who don't feel the need to go on and constantly brag about themselves. So it's really a matter of character there, and I'll leave that point there. Number three, I think, is one of the most important things that I'm going to talk about here, and that is looking inside yourself to improve rather than looking outside and finding scapegoats and people to blame. Now, what's typical of this incel community is, oh, these women are stuck up and they're teases and they're this and they're that. Well, listen, that really is irrelevant. You need to look inside yourself, and although I don't really like to share a lot of very personal things on here, I will to an extent when it is beneficial for the video. And in this case, it is. So I'm going to bring you back to my junior high and high school years, briefly. I don't really want to think about it that long. So our junior high and high school were in the same building. So from 7th grade to 12th grade, you're in the same building. Now, you take me when I was in 7th and 8th grade, probably part of 9th, you're talking about 5'3", might have weighed 110 pounds, braces, glasses, total outcast. And here's a side note, I wouldn't have it any other way. I've never really been someone who needs to be part of the in crowd or whatever, but let's face it, everybody wants to be able to go to school without being picked on, without being beaten up. And, you don't want to be ridiculed constantly. So what did I do? Now, I realized very quickly that I was going to have to fight. And by that, I mean literally fight. And that's what I did. So once you get over that, and it's an unfortunate reality, but it is part of growing up sometimes. And I wish it weren't. But in an odd way, I'm not so sure that you're going to get the life skills you need if you don't go through that to some degree. Hopefully very minimally. But it happened. So once I did that, things did change because, a bully is basically only going to go after someone who really always backs down. Now, I'm not saying you can't get your ass kicked, because you can, but, it's... Again, it's a part of your life that you're going to have to conquer and get through. So back to my point, I looked inward. So I said to myself, okay, what can I do to change myself rather than blaming everyone around me? So bring us up to about 10th grade or so. Now, some of it was just the way things happened. I grew. I happened to grow up to be about 6'2". I gained weight. I started working out. I, started taking martial arts. My braces came off. I got contact lenses. And, I was still an outcast. I mean, I still just didn't participate. But let's put it this way. I certainly wasn't getting picked on anymore. So what I'm getting at here, and I want to have a side note really quickly. I'm not trying to, for the last thing I'm trying to do is say, be part of the crowd and appearances are everything. But let's face it, if you're in high school and you do at least want to have the ability to ask someone out on a date, you'd like to at least hope that there's a possibility he or she will say yes. And you want to be able to go there unmolested and without being beaten up and constantly ridiculed. So, these are the things that you might have to do for yourself. Now, I may have been small and I may have been picked on and whatnot, but then as I went forward, I was very into the alternative scene, and I just, that kind of music and everything. But there were people back in my high school too who, and I'm not trying to make fun of them, but they also had hygiene problems, and when you really don't bathe, and your hair is all greasy, and you have bad breath, and you smell or whatever, you're not really going to be someone that people are going to want to be around. And kids are cruel. We all know this. So this is what I'm saying about look inside yourself rather than for some role model who is going to answer all these questions for you, or have you lash out at some group of people that really aren't, it isn't their fault. So I think that's about all I have to say about point number 3. So moving on. Number 4 is taking personal responsibility. This is general. This doesn't even apply to young men, young women. This applies to everyone. You have to take responsibility for your actions. Now, I have done things. I'll do one more example of rather private matter, but I'm gonna share a little bit of it so I can give you context here. About 10 years ago, maybe 12, something probably more like 12 years now, I was no longer happy in my life. I have been pretty positive person my whole life. I've always really looked at at life with the glass half full rather than half empty. But I realized I wasn't happy anymore, and I wasn't behaving in a manner that I felt was true to myself. I felt I had done things that were dishonorable. I almost destroyed a very, very precious relationship. And I was doing things that I felt I was ashamed of. I was drinking too much. I was partying too much. And I felt that I had finally come to a point where I don't know if I just didn't care about life the way I did. So I went and I got therapy. Now, this is what I'm going to say about therapy. I'm going to try to speed this up too so I don't rant about it. I've had friends come to me and talk to me about, hey, I think I need help, and I gave them this advice, and this is the only way it's going to work. I can promise you that. If you go to a therapist, okay, number 1, you have to get a therapist that you have rapport with. If you go a few times and you're not feeling it, say it to them, okay? Now, any therapist, psychiatrist, psychologist, whatever, of any repute is going to say, listen, that's fine. I can recommend someone else, or if you feel you need to go elsewhere. If they say anything else, like, well, let's give it some time, and, I think you're good, then they're just after your money. So, first of all, find someone you have a rapport with. Number 2, stick with it. You can't have a lifetime of problems, emotional issues, things that you haven't dealt with, and then expect to go to therapy 2 or 3 times at most, and then everything's going to be okay. I can promise you it will not be. Now, I still see the same therapist to this day. Not as often, and he's actually going to be retiring soon. He's been a great influence on my life and has helped me in so many ways I can't describe. But here's the one I wanted to talk to you about. I, as all of us, never thought that I would be getting cancer. It's not something that you think of, my dad had it, my grandfather, people
Cancer.
I know, I've lost people
Don't be
to cancer.
Silly. That can't happen to me.
Cancer, that's not going to happen. Well, it did. And I got one of the worst kinds that you can get, pancreatic cancer. So my point here is this. I had, for a few years before that diagnosis, in fact, many years, had therapy and learned how to get the proper tools and ways of dealing with problems that I didn't even realize that I had. So when that call came in and I was told, listen, you may not have a lot longer to be here, I was able to, I'm not saying it wasn't difficult, but I was able to get through this in a responsible manner. I had to get my affairs in order. I had to kind of say goodbye to a lot of people in writing, which I'm glad I never had to give to them, but you get my meaning. This is what you have to do. You have to take personal responsibility for yourself, always, because you're never going to be honorable if you don't. And I'll leave it at that. And to my last point. Point number 5, I really just don't think this one needs much explanation. It's so simple. It's going to even resonate with Christians because I know it's one of their basic tenets that they claim that they believe in. But no matter what religion you are, if you're an atheist, if you're an agnostic, whatever you are, do unto others as you would have them do to you. It's so simple. I mean, if that part doesn't get through up here with you, then I'm not even sure anyone can help you. I mean, if you treat people badly and you just are selfish and you know you're offensive and you find scapegoats and you're whatever the case may be, just think for a minute, would you yourself like to be treated that way? And I can guarantee that the answer is no. So I'm going to leave it at that. I'd like to once again say, and I also, I guess I'll put it up right here. I had an update on Andrew Tate's incarceration and where he ended up and what Romanian prisons are like. So I'm going to leave a link to that in the description if you'd like to read more about it. It's a decent article. And what else did I forget? Oh, yeah. Well, I my New Year's Day video had a little clip about U2, which I can't play the song New Year's Day, obviously, because it's copyright infringement. But I'm going to put a link to that song down here. And you know what? If you're not familiar with them and you want to hear a great song and maybe delve more into their music, they're one of my favorite bands. So on a side note, I'm going to do that as well. Other than that, again, have a great, happy 2023. I hope it's great for everybody. As always, be kind to people whenever you can, including yourself, which is almost all the time. And please be kind to our animal friends. We are their voice, and they give us so, so much to be grateful for. Peace, everybody. Saying this part of the conversation really is kind of a private one, so I don't know what you're still doing here, but yeah, the video's over, right? Yeah, it's over.